he, a stern tycoon, harbored a secret and forbidden love for Eleanor, his brother's fiancée. On the wedding day, Marco's family orchestrates a cruel switch. Eleanor is whisked away and replaced with a bride of convenience. Peter, the best man, witnesses the deception. The injustice and manipulation by his family revolt him. At the crucial moment of the vows, he interrupts the ceremony, approaches Eleanor, and with a choked voice and tears in his eyes, reveals the truth. "Eleanor, you've been replaced. This wedding is a sham. My family arranged this. Please forgive me. I love you and I always have." Prepare for a twist where a secret love and a cruel substitution intertwine, and society, enemies in the past, will try to destroy the fragile. Peace they attempt to build, but passion and loyalty can heal broken hearts and prove that the truest love is the one that arises from the ruins. Watch this story until the end. You will be surprised by this story. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. Every day we post videos like this, continuing. The merciless March sun beat down on the windows of the small tailoring shop in Little Italy, New York City. Eleanor Farrell wiped the sweat from her brow as she adjusted the final details of the wedding dress she had created with such care. At 28, she had turned her childhood dream into reality, building her own bespoke dressmaking business. Each stitch, each embroidery was made with love and dedication, even when bills were piling up and exhaustion seemed unbearable. "One more month, and I'll finally be Mrs. Romano," she whispered to herself, smiling as she thought of Mark. They had met in design school, and since then he had been her safe harbor, her certainty amidst life's uncertainties. The wedding was in 2 weeks at the neighborhood church where she grew up, simple but filled with love. Eleanor looked at her reflection in the shop's smudged mirror, her chestnut hair pulled back in a simple bun, her hands calloused from hard work, the simple dress she wore every day. She was different from the wealthy women who frequented the boutiques downtown, but Mark always said that's what made her special. Across town, in the high-rise of Romano Tower, Peter Romano signed multi-million-dollar contracts with the same ease others wrote checks at the grocery store. At 37, he had transformed the family construction company into an empire that dominated the luxury real estate market in New York City. His name was synonymous with power, sophistication, and business success. But at that moment, Peter wasn't thinking about business. He stared out of his office's panoramic window, lost in thoughts that had tormented him for years. Guilt was his constant companion, a weight he carried in his chest since he had met Eleanor 3 years ago when Mark had brought her to a family dinner. It was love at first sight, not the overwhelming passion of movies, but something deeper and more painful. The certainty that she was the woman he had been waiting for his whole life, and the bitter irony that she belonged to his younger brother, Mark, the spoiled youngest of the family, who had always gotten everything effortlessly, including the heart of the only woman Peter had ever truly desired. "Mr. Romano?" His secretary's voice brought him back to reality. "Your mother is here. She says it's urgent." Mrs. Giovanna Romano entered the office with the imposing elegance of an Italian matriarch. At 65, she still ruled the family with an iron fist disguised under kid gloves. "Peter, my son, we need to talk about Mark's wedding." "What about Mark's wedding, Mother?" Peter struggled to keep his voice neutral. "That girl, Eleanor, she is sweet, but she is not what our family needs at this moment." Giovanna settled into the leather armchair, choosing her words carefully. "The Bennetts have a daughter, Isabella. A union between our families would be strategic." Peter felt his blood run cold. "Mother, Mark loves Eleanor. They're getting married in 2 weeks. Love is a luxury our family cannot afford, Peter. You know that better than anyone." Giovanna's gaze was cold and calculating. The Bennets control most of the land we need for the new project. A merger of the families through marriage would be perfect. Mark would never agree to that. Mark doesn't need to agree. He just needs to be at the altar. Giovanna stood up, smoothing her skirt. It's all arranged. Eleanor will have a discomfort moments before the ceremony. Isabella will be ready to take her place. Peter stood up abruptly, his fist clenched on the desk. That's monstrous, Mother. You can't do that to her. I can and I will. The Romano family always comes first, Peter. I hope you remember that. Giovanna walked to the door, stopping before leaving. And I hope you fulfill your role as best man without causing problems. It would be a pity if we discovered what your true feelings are for Eleanor. The door closed with a soft click, but the sound echoed in Peter's chest like a gunshot. She knew. His mother had always known, and now she was using it as a weapon. Peter sank into the armchair, his head in his hands. In 2 weeks, he would be at the altar, watching the woman he loved be humiliated and betrayed in the cruelest way possible. And worst of all, he would be a silent accomplice to this betrayal. At that same moment, Eleanor finished wrapping the last dress of the week, humming a romantic song softly. She had no idea that her life was about to fall apart, nor that the man who secretly loved her was the only person in the world who could save her from the cruel fate that the Romano family had planned for her. Destiny, however, had its own plans for that forbidden love that had grown in silence and pain. Eleanor adjusted her navy blue dress, the most elegant one she owned, as she looked at herself in the small bathroom mirror of her apartment. It was the Romano family's introductory dinner, a tradition that Giovanna insisted on before any wedding. Mark had insisted it was just a formality, but Eleanor felt a chill in her stomach that she couldn't explain. "Relax, honey," Mark said, adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. "It's just dinner. My family already knows you." Eleanor forced a smile. Knowing and accepting were very different things, and she could see that in the polite but distant looks she received from Giovanna. Peter, on the other hand, had always been too kind, almost uncomfortably attentive, as if he were trying to compensate. And for something, the Romano mansion in the Upper East Side was lit up like a palace. Eleanor felt small, walking through the marble entryway, her simple shoes echoing on the polished floor. The dining table seated 12, but that night there were only 5. Giovanna at the head, Mark and Eleanor on one side, Peter alone on the other. "Eleanor, dear, you look radiant," Giovanna said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Tell us about the wedding preparations." "Everything is going well, Mrs. Romano. We chose a simple ceremony at the church where I grew up." "Simple." Giovanna repeated the word as if it had a bitter taste. "How interesting." "Peter, do you remember your wedding to Olivia? What a magnificent party that was." Eleanor felt Mark tense up beside her. Peter seemed to choke on his wine. "Mother, please," Peter muttered. "What? There's nothing wrong with reminiscing. Too bad it didn't last. But at least it was a wedding worthy of the Romano name." Giovanna delicately cut her salmon. "Eleanor, I imagine you understand the importance of family traditions." "Of course," Eleanor replied, although she didn't understand where Giovanna was going with this. Peter watched Eleanor with an intensity that made her blush. There was something in his dark eyes that she couldn't decipher. Sadness, guilt, maybe desire. Whenever their eyes met, she felt an electric current run through her skin, which made her deeply uncomfortable. It was wrong to feel anything for her fiancé's brother. "Peter built an empire," Giovanna continued. "Mark was lucky to be born into a prosperous family. Some of us, however, need to fight harder to earn our place in the world." The tension at the table was palpable. Eleanor lowered her eyes to her plate, her cheeks burning with humiliation. Mark took her hand under the table, squeezing it in, silent support. Eleanor built her own business from scratch, Peter said suddenly, his voice firmer than usual. Her determination is admirable. Giovanna raised an eyebrow. How generous of you, Peter. It's not generosity, it's the truth. The look Peter gave Eleanor at that moment was like a caress. She felt her heart race and hated herself for it. She was Mark's fiancée, for God's sake. She shouldn't be feeling these things for her brother-in-law. Dinner continued in a tense atmosphere, punctuated by subtle comments from Giovanna about social suitability and smart choices. Eleanor barely touched her food, eager for the night to end. When they finally got up from the table, Peter approached her in the entrance hall. "Eleanor, can I talk to you for a moment alone?" Mark was in the bathroom and Giovanna had retired to her rooms. Eleanor hesitated, but agreed with a nod. Peter led her to a small adjacent office, closing the door behind them. The small space left them uncomfortably close. "I wanted to apologize for my mother's behavior," he said, running a hand through his dark hair. "She can be difficult." "You don't need to apologize. I understand she's worried about the family." "No." Peter took a step forward, and Eleanor felt his masculine scent invade her senses. "She was rude. You don't deserve that." Eleanor looked up to meet his eyes. They were so close that she could see the small lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his strong jaw. The air between them seemed charged with electricity. "Peter," she whispered, not knowing what to say. He raised his hand as if to touch her face, but stopped at the last second, his fingers trembling in the air between them. "You're beautiful," he murmured, so low that she barely heard. "Mark is a lucky man." The moment was broken when Mark knocked on the door. "Are you guys in there?" "We need to go, Eleanor. You have to wake up early tomorrow." Peter stepped back quickly, opening the door. "Of course. Good night, Eleanor." In the car, Mark was excited, talking about the final details of the wedding, but Eleanor could barely concentrate. Her hands were still shaking, and she could feel Peter's gaze burning in her memory. 3 days later, Eleanor was in her workshop. When the phone rang, it was Peter's deep, familiar voice. "Eleanor, I need to talk to you. It's about Mark and about the wedding." "What happened? Is he all right?" A long pause. "He's fine. But there's something you need to know. Something that will change everything." Eleanor felt the world spin. "Peter, you're scaring me. I can't talk on the phone. Can you meet me at Cafe Milano on Madison Avenue in an hour? Please, Eleanor. It's important." I don't know if it's appropriate." "Eleanor." His voice was almost a plea. "Trust me, just this once." Eleanor closed her eyes, knowing that she was about to cross a line from which she might not be able to return. "I'll be there." Eleanor arrived at Cafe Milano 15 minutes late, her hands sweaty and her heart pounding. Peter was already there, sitting at a corner table, away from prying eyes. He stood up when he saw her, and she noticed the deep circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days. "Thanks for coming," he said, pulling out the chair for her. "Peter, what's going on? You said it was about Mark." He sat down opposite her, his hands clasped on the table. "Eleanor, what do you know about our family's first wedding? My wedding to Olivia?" The question caught her off guard. "Mark told me you divorced a few years ago, that it didn't work out." Peter gave a bitter laugh. "Didn't work out." He looked out the window, as if seeking courage in the busy streets of New York City. "Want to know the truth? I didn't love Olivia. I never loved her. Peter, let me finish." He turned his eyes to her, and Eleanor saw a deep pain there. "My mother arranged that marriage. The Bennetts have important businesses, and a union between us would consolidate the Romano Empire. I was 28 years old and as obedient as a lamb. Eleanor felt a chill in her stomach. Why are you telling me this? Because Olivia contacted me yesterday. Peter took an envelope from his jacket pocket, placing it on the table. She came to warn me about something she discovered, about my mother's plans for your wedding. Eleanor's hands trembled as she picked up the envelope. Inside were photos. Giovanna talking to a young, blonde and elegant woman, papers being signed, what looked like a negotiation. Who is she? Eleanor asked, although part of her already knew the answer. Isabella Bennett, daughter of Lorenzo Bennett, our biggest rival in business. Peter leaned forward. Eleanor, my mother is planning to replace you at the altar. The words hit Eleanor like a punch to the stomach. That's impossible. Mark would never allow. Mark doesn't know. He believes he's going to marry you. Peter took her hands, which were ice cold. The plan is simple and cruel. On the wedding day, moments before the ceremony, you'll have a sudden illness. You'll be taken to a room to recover, but in reality, you'll be kept there while Isabella takes your place. Eleanor stood up abruptly, knocking over the chair. Several people looked over, but she didn't care. This is insane. How could Mark not know? He knows me. With the veil from a distance in the emotion of the moment, Peter also stood up, gently holding her arm. Eleanor, please sit down. I know it's hard to believe. Why are you telling me this? Tears began to stream down her face. If it's true, why didn't you stop it before? Peter closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, Eleanor saw a vulnerability that she never imagined existed in that powerful man. Because I'm a coward, he whispered. Because for 3 years I let this happen. I stayed silent while you fell in love with my brother, planned a future with him, dreamed of a life that my family would never allow you to have. I don't understand. Eleanor. Peter ran a hand over his face, his voice choked. Do you have any idea what it was like for me to watch you fall in love with Mark? What it was like to smile and feign happiness while my heart shattered at every family gathering? Eleanor's world stopped. Peter, what are you saying? I'm saying that I love you. The words came out like a confession torn from him. I've loved you since the first moment Mark brought you home. I love you in a way that consumes me and shames me because you're my brother's fiancée. Eleanor sat down slowly, her legs weak. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Peter knelt beside her chair, ignoring the stares of the other patrons. And that's why I couldn't stay silent any longer. I can't let my family destroy you like they destroyed my first chance to be happy. Your first chance? Peter lowered his head. Before Olivia, there was another woman, Carmen. She was an elementary school teacher, the daughter of a factory worker. I loved her deeply, wanted to marry her. His voice became almost inaudible. My mother found out and she made Carmen disappear. I never saw her again. After that, I surrendered to the arranged marriage like a defeated man. Eleanor touched his face with trembling fingers. Peter, I won't let it happen again, Eleanor. Not with you. He held her hand against his face. Even if you can never love me, even if you choose to stay with Mark, I can no longer be complicit with my family. The silence between them was interrupted by the ringtone of Eleanor's cell phone. It was Mark. Honey, where are you? My mother wants to schedule the final cake tasting this afternoon. Eleanor looked at Peter, who stepped back and returned to his chair. The irony was cruel. Giovanna was continuing the preparations for the sham while planning the bride's replacement. I'm taking care of some final details on the dress. I'll see you at home later. Okay, love you. Love you too, she lied, for the first time. When she hung up, Peter was watching her with an expression that mixed hope and despair. What are we going to do? She asked. We? Peter smiled for the first time since she had arrived. You said we. Eleanor realized what she had said and blushed. I mean, Eleanor, I have a plan, but it will require you to trust me completely. She looked at the photos scattered on the table, at the man who had just confessed an impossible love, at the reality that was shattering around her. What kind of plan? Peter leaned forward, his eyes shining with a determination she had never seen before. A plan that will expose the truth and, perhaps, give us a chance to rewrite our destinies. D. 2 nights after the meeting at the cafe, Eleanor was in her workshop, finishing the last adjustments on her wedding dress, when she heard urgent knocking on the door. It was almost 10 at night, and she wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, she found Peter drenched from the torrential rain falling over New York City, his eyes red and desperate. "Peter, what happened?" "They accelerated the plan," he said, entering without being invited. "Eleanor, you need to know something, now." She closed the door, noticing that he was shaking, not from the cold, but from something much deeper. "Mark is traveling to a business meeting in Miami, right?" "Yes, he comes back tomorrow night. Why?" Peter ran his wet hands through his hair. "He's not in Miami. He is at the family's private clinic, hospitalized." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "What? What do you mean, hospitalized?" "A car accident last night. Nothing serious, but he'll be in observation for a few days." Peter walked over to her, his clothes dripping on the wooden floor. "My mother forbade me to tell you. She said it would be better if you didn't worry before the wedding. I need to see him. I need to be with him. Eleanor, listen." Peter held her shoulders, forcing her to look into his eyes. "Mark crashed his car, leaving another woman's house." The words hit Eleanor like a slap in the face. "That's not true." "I wish it weren't." Peter took his cell phone out of his pocket, showing photos that had clearly been taken by a private investigator. Mark leaving an elegant apartment, kissing a blonde woman, getting into the car already visibly impaired. Eleanor sat down heavily in the work chair, the world spinning around her. "How long?" "Since you got engaged. It's Veronica Almeida, the daughter of a judge. Mark met her at a family party." Peter knelt in front of her. "Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I found out a week ago and didn't know how to tell you." "A week ago?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "You knew a week ago and let me continue planning this wedding?" "I was trying to protect you. I wanted to find a way to..." "To what?" Eleanor stood up abruptly, pushing him away. "To humiliate me even more. You and your whole family are the same. You all see me as an idiot." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Tears streamed down her face. "Your mother plans to replace me at the altar. Your brother cheats on me with another woman, and you stand there pretending to love me while hiding the truth from me." Peter stood up, desperate. "Eleanor, I love you. Everything I did was to try to protect you." "Protect? By lying to me?" The argument was interrupted by a clap of thunder that made all the lights in the workshop flicker. The storm outside had intensified, and suddenly the power went out, leaving them in complete darkness. Eleanor stumbled, trying to find the candles she kept for emergencies, but Peter got there first, catching her in his arms when she almost fell on the sewing machine. "Careful," he whispered, holding her against his chest. In the darkness, alone, with the world collapsing around them, something changed. Eleanor could feel Peter's heart beating against hers, his warm breath on her neck. She should pull away, should keep her distance, but all the pain and betrayal she felt turned into a desperate need to be comforted. "Eleanor," he murmured her name like a prayer. "Don't talk," she whispered back. When their lips met, it was as if the world caught fire. All the months of repressed tension, of stolen glances, of denied attraction exploded in a desperate and hungry kiss. Peter pressed her against the wall, his hands trembling as they caressed her face, her hair. Eleanor knew it was wrong, knew she was betraying Mark even after finding out about Veronica, but she couldn't stop. Each touch from Peter erased a little of the pain. Each kiss made her forget the humiliation she felt. "I love you so much," he murmured against her lips, "so much that it hurts to breathe when you're not around." "Peter," she moaned, lost in sensations she had never experienced with Mark. They made love right there, on the floor of the workshop, among fabrics and lace, with the rain drumming furiously outside. It was desperate and tender at the same time, born of pain but growing into something pure and true. Afterward, wrapped in a silk sheet that Eleanor would use to make a dress, they remained in silence, listening to the storm subside. Reality began to reassert itself. "What have we done?" Eleanor whispered, the guilt starting to take over her. "We loved each other," Peter replied simply, stroking her hair. "For the first time in my life, I truly gave myself to someone. But Mark betrayed you first, and even if he hadn't betrayed..." Peter leaned on his elbow, looking at her. "Eleanor, what we feel for each other isn't wrong. What would be wrong is you marrying him feeling the way you feel about me." Eleanor closed her eyes. "I can't just cancel the wedding. People will talk, my family." "Then don't cancel it." She looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" Peter got up, starting to get dressed. "Let my family execute their plan. Let Isabella take your place at the altar." "Peter, have you gone crazy?" "Listen to me." He knelt beside her again. "On the wedding day, when they come to get you with the excuse of the illness you won't resist, go with them, but I'll be waiting." "Waiting where?" "At the back exit of the church. My car will be there." His eyes shone in the semi-darkness. "We'll run away together, Eleanor. We'll leave behind all this sham and start a new life. This is insane. It's our only chance." Peter held her face in his hands. "Do you trust me?" Eleanor looked at the man who had just awakened sensations she didn't know existed, who had exposed his own vulnerability to protect her, who was proposing that she abandon her entire known life for an uncertain future. "Yes," she whispered, "I trust you." But neither of them knew that across the street, hidden in the shadow of an awning, someone had watched Peter enter the workshop and photographed everything he could through the windows before the power went out. Lorenzo Bennett smiled when he saw the photos on his digital camera. Mrs. Giovanna Romano would pay dearly for these images. After all, discovering that her eldest son was having an affair with her youngest son's fiancée would be valuable information to waste. The game had changed completely. The day dawned gray and heavy in New York City. Eleanor woke up in her apartment with her body aching and her mind in turmoil. The memories of the previous night, with Peter mixing pleasure and guilt in equal doses. She had showered 3 times, as if she could erase what had happened, but his scent still seemed to be impregnated on her skin. The phone rang at 8 in the morning. It was Mark. "Honey, how are you? I heard you had a terrible storm there in New York City." His voice sounded normal, without any indication that he was hospitalized or that he knew anything. Eleanor swallowed hard. "I'm fine. How's business in Miami?" "Going perfectly. I'll be back tonight as we agreed." A pause. "Eleanor, you sound strange. Is everything all right?" "Just pre-wedding jitters, I guess." After hanging up, Eleanor dressed mechanically and left for her workshop. She needed to finish some last details on the bridesmaid dresses, but mostly she needed to keep her mind occupied. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Peter on top of her, heard his groans mixed with her own. The workshop was exactly as they had left it the night before. Pieces of fabric scattered on the floor, the mark of their bodies still visible on the crumpled silk sheet. Eleanor quickly gathered everything up, trying to erase the physical evidence of her betrayal. That's when she found the note. It was folded under her sewing machine, written in Peter's elegant handwriting. "Last night changed my life forever. Love you, trust me. P." Eleanor held the paper against her chest, an involuntary smile sprouting on her lips when the door of the workshop opened violently. "Good morning, dear Eleanor." Lorenzo Bennett entered as if he owned the place, followed by two men in dark suits who were clearly security guards. He was a short and round man with a grey mustache and small, calculating eyes. "Mr. Bennett." Eleanor hid the note behind her back. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk to the fiancé of young Mark Romano." Lorenzo walked through the workshop, examining the dresses hanging with feigned interest. "What a modest place. Very different from the palaces my daughter is used to." "Your daughter?" "Isabella, my firstborn." Lorenzo smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "A very beautiful young woman, very well educated. She would be a perfect wife for any man from a traditional family." Eleanor felt her stomach clench. "I don't understand what you're getting at." "Of course you do, dear." Lorenzo took a leather folder from the inside pocket of his jacket. "You spoke with Peter Romano a few days ago. He told you about his family's plans, didn't he?" Eleanor's blood ran cold. "How do you—" "I know many things, Eleanor. For example, I know that Peter left your house yesterday at 5 in the morning, after spending the entire night here." Lorenzo opened the folder, revealing photographs. "I know that you two are having a very passionate affair. The photos didn't show intimate details due to the darkness and the curtains, but they were compromising enough. Peter entering the workshop wet from the rain, the two in silhouettes embracing against the window, Peter leaving in the early morning with his clothes crumpled. "What do you want?" Eleanor asked, her voice trembling. "Smart, I'll get straight to the point." Lorenzo put away the photos and sat down in the only chair in the workshop. "I want you to disappear." "What do you mean?" "Simple. You're going to vanish from New York City before the wedding. You're going to leave a letter for Mark saying that you realized you don't love him, that you can't marry him. You're going to leave and never come back." Eleanor laughed, but it was a humorless sound. "And if I refuse?" "If you refuse, these photos will end up in the hands of Mark, Giovanna Romano, and all the society press in New York City." Lorenzo crossed his legs calmly. "Imagine the headlines. Bride cheats on future husband with brother-in-law on the eve of the wedding. It would be a delicious scandal. You wouldn't do that. I would and I will, but it doesn't have to come to that." Lorenzo stood up. "I'm going to be generous, Eleanor. I'm offering you $500,000 to disappear. That's more money than you'd see in your entire life sewing dresses." Eleanor felt the ground slip beneath her feet. "Why are you doing this? What's your interest?" "My interest is to see my daughter married to Mark Romano, uniting our families and our empires." Lorenzo walked to the door. "And my interest is to destroy Peter Romano. That arrogant man always thought he was better than me. Seeing his family's empire crumble because of a sex scandal would be satisfying. Peter has nothing to do with this. He has everything to do with it." Lorenzo stopped at the door. "You have until tomorrow morning to decide, Eleanor. Either you disappear voluntarily, or I'll make you disappear along with the Romano's reputation." After he left, Eleanor collapsed in the chair, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She picked up her cell phone to call Peter, but hesitated. What if his phone was also being monitored? She was putting away Peter's note when she heard footsteps on the outside stairs. This time it was Giovanna Romano, elegant as always, but with an icy expression that Eleanor had never seen before. "Eleanor, dear," Giovanna said, entering uninvited, "we need to talk. If it's about the wedding, it's about much more than the wedding." Giovanna approached, and Eleanor could see the barely contained fury in her eyes. "It's about my son Peter." Eleanor tried to keep her voice steady. I don't understand. Of course you do. Giovanna pulled out different photographs from Lorenzo's. These were older, showing Peter entering Eleanor's building several times over the months. Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you think I haven't noticed the way my son looks at you, the way you look at him? Mrs. Romano, shut up and listen to me. The matriarch's voice was like steel. I built this empire with my own hands after. My husband died. I protected my sons. I protected our family. I'm not going to allow a two-bit seamstress to destroy everything I've worked for. I never wanted to destroy anything, but that's exactly what's going to happen if you continue with this charade. Giovanna approached closer, intimidating. Peter is obsessed with you. He already ruined one arranged marriage because of you, and now he's ready to ruin his own brothers. What arranged marriage? Giovanna smiled cruelly. Do you think it was a coincidence that Peter divorced Olivia shortly after meeting you? Do you think it was a coincidence that he never accepted any of the women I introduced him to? Eleanor felt nauseous. That's not true. It's absolutely true. And now he's willing to destroy Mark, his own family, for you. Giovanna grabbed Eleanor by the arm, squeezing hard. But I'm not going to allow it. Let go of me. You're going to disappear, Eleanor. You're going to leave this city and never come back, because if you don't do it voluntarily... Giovanna released her arm, leaving red marks. I'm going to destroy not only you, but also your family, your father who works as a night watchman, your mother who cleans houses, your younger sister who studies medicine so diligently. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. You wouldn't do that to innocent people. I would, and I will. In 24 hours, they'll all be unemployed and their names ruined. Your sister will never be able to finish college. Giovanna walked to the door. The choice is yours, dear. Protect your family and disappear, or watch everyone you love pay for your selfishness. Ubi. When she was finally alone, Eleanor collapsed on the floor of the workshop, sobbing uncontrollably. She was cornered between two predators, each using the people she loved as weapons against her. Her phone vibrated. A message from Peter. I couldn't stop thinking about you. I can't wait to start our new life together. Eleanor looked at the message through tears. How could she tell him that they were both being blackmailed? How could she destroy his dreams when she could barely process her own pain? She typed and deleted dozens of replies until finally sending only, "We need to see each other. It's urgent." But deep in her heart, Eleanor already knew that there was no way out. To protect Peter, to protect her family, she would have to make the biggest sacrifice of her life. She would have to disappear and let everyone believe that she had abandoned the man she loved for money. Then, Eleanor and Peter met at the same cafe as the first time, but now the atmosphere was completely different. She arrived with her eyes red from crying so much, and Peter immediately realized that something terrible had happened. Eleanor, what is it? You look... Peter, I need to tell you something, and then you're going to hate me. He held her hands over the table. That's impossible. Nothing you say will change what I feel for you. With a choked voice, Eleanor told him about Lorenzo and Giovanna's visits, about the blackmail, about the threats to her family. With each word, she saw Peter's face become paler, more tense. They photographed us, she whispered, showing copies of the photos that Lorenzo had left. They know everything. Peter looked at the images with a mixture of anger and despair. My own mother, I should have imagined she'd find out. Peter, I'm going to leave. What? He looked up sharply. I'm going to accept Lorenzo's money, and I'm going to disappear. It's the only way to protect you and my family. No! Peter slammed his fist on the table, making the cups clatter. Eleanor, you can't do that. We'll fight. We'll face them together. How? Tears streamed freely down her face. With what weapons? They have money, power, influence. What do we have? An impossible love that's going to destroy everyone around us? Peter got up and went to her side, kneeling next to the chair. "Eleanor, I don't care about the empire, about the money, about any of that. I can start from scratch if I have to." "And your family? And Mark?" "Mark betrayed you first. He doesn't deserve you. But I—" Helena stroked his face tenderly. "Peter, look at me. Really look. I'm a seamstress from Little Italy. You're a tycoon from the Upper East Side. This would never work." "Don't say that. It's the truth. And deep down, you know it." Eleanor stood up, grabbing her purse. "I'm leaving tonight for Sarasota, where I have an aunt. I'm going to start a new life there." Peter stood up too, desperate. "Eleanor, I love you. I love you too. That's why I'm doing this." She ran out of the cafe, leaving Peter alone among the empty cups and the shards of the future they had dreamed of together. And on that same afternoon, Lorenzo Bennett drove to the Romano mansion with a satisfied smile. He found Giovanna in her private office, signing papers. "Giovanna, my dear, I have interesting news." "If it's about the wedding, Lorenzo, I've already taken care of everything. That Eleanor girl will disappear today." "Ah, but my news is even better." Lorenzo placed an envelope on her desk. "Your son Peter has been very busy lately." Giovanna opened the envelope and her expression changed drastically when she saw the most compromising photographs, those taken through the workshop window before the storm knocked out the lights. That scoundrel," she murmured, studying. "The images? How dare he? The question is, what are you going to do with this information?" And Giovanna leaned back in her armchair, calculating. "Mark comes back from Miami today. The wedding is tomorrow. If these photos leak now, it would be the end of the Romano family's reputation," Lorenzo completed. "Unless, of course, we come to an agreement." "What kind of agreement?" "Simple. Peter leaves the family business. He steps away from the businesses completely. In exchange, these photos never see the light of day." Lorenzo smiled. "And my daughter Isabella marries Mark as planned." "You're blackmailing me, Lorenzo?" "I'm offering a solution that benefits us all." Giovanna remained silent for long minutes, analyzing her options. Finally, she sighed. "All right. But Peter can't know that you have these photos. I'll take care of him myself." Peter arrived home in the late afternoon to find the whole family gathered in the main living room, something that only happened on very special or very serious occasions. Mark was there, apparently recovered from his accident. Giovanna presided at the head of the table, and there were several people that Peter didn't recognize. "Ah, Peter, good that you've arrived," said Giovanna with a coldness that he knew well. "Sit down. We have matters to discuss." "Mother, if it's about the wedding, it's about much more than the wedding." Mark stood up, holding an envelope. "It's about betrayal." Peter felt his blood run cold when he saw the photographs being spread across the table. They were different from those that Eleanor had shown. These were more explicit, more compromising. "Where did you get this?" Peter asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Does it matter?" Mark was visibly shaken, his hands trembling. "Peter, how could you? She was going to be my wife." "Mark, I can explain." "Explain what? That you were sleeping with my fiancé?" Mark threw the photos on the floor. "That you were planning to humiliate me at the altar? You have no right to talk about betrayal," Peter exploded. "You were cheating on Eleanor with Veronica Almeida for months." The silence that followed was deafening. Mark went pale. "How? How do you know that?" "Because unlike you, I care about Eleanor enough to protect her." Peter looked at everyone present. "Yes, I love her. I've loved her since the first day. And yes, we had a night together. But it was after I found out that this scoundrel was cheating on her." Giovanna slammed her hand on the table. "Enough! You both are a disgrace to this family." "No, said a voice from the entrance to the room. Everyone turned to see Eleanor standing in the doorway, pale but determined. She held a small suitcase in one hand and an envelope in the other. "Eleanor," Peter stood up. "I thought you had already left. I was going to leave, but then I realized that running wouldn't solve anything." Eleanor entered the room, looking at everyone present. "If you're going to destroy me anyway, let it be face to face. You shouldn't be here," Giovanna said coldly. "Of course I should. After all, I'm the center of all this drama, aren't I?" Eleanor placed the envelope on the table. "This is my letter of resignation from the wedding. Mark, I'm sorry, but I can't marry a man who betrays me and who doesn't truly love me." Mark lowered his eyes, ashamed. "And you, Peter?" Eleanor turned to him, her eyes shining with contained tears. "Thank you for showing me what true love is, even if it was for only one night." "Eleanor, don't!" "I'm leaving this city. You got what you wanted." Eleanor looked directly at Giovanna. "The unsuitable seamstress will disappear forever." "Eleanor, please." Peter tried to approach, but she stepped back. "Don't make this harder than it already is." Eleanor opened the door. "Goodbye, Peter. Be happy." She left, leaving only the echo of her footsteps on the marble of the hall. Peter ran after her. But when he reached the entrance to the mansion, he only saw the taillights of the taxi disappearing into the rainy New York City night. "Eleanor!" he shouted into the void, but she had already disappeared. When he returned to the room, everyone was still silent. Peter looked at each of those present, his mother, his brother, the lawyers, the blackmailers. "Congratulations," he said with a deep bitterness. "You destroyed the only pure thing that existed in this family of shit." And without another word, Peter left the Romano mansion, not knowing that he would never return. 3 hours later, Lorenzo Bennett received a phone call confirming that Eleanor Farrell had boarded the 11:45 p.m. flight to Sarasota. The plan had worked perfectly. Now, all that was left was to clean up the wreckage and prepare the wedding between Mark and Isabella. But none of them imagined that Eleanor had left more than a letter of resignation. In the envelope she left on the table, there was also a copy of all the photographs that Lorenzo possessed, along with an audio recording of his blackmail and documents proving Mark's betrayal. The bomb was armed. All it needed was someone to light it. 6 months had passed since Eleanor disappeared from New York City. In Sarasota, she had managed to get a small job at a local workshop and lived in a modest apartment near the beach. Every day, she fought against the urge to call Peter to know how he was, if he still thought about her. It was on a rainy September morning that everything changed. Eleanor was organizing fabrics when her Aunt Carmen entered the workshop with the newspaper in her hands, her face pale with shock. "Eleanor, you need to see this." The front page headline screamed, "Scandal in New York Elite, Romano Empire on the brink of collapse." Below it, a photo of Peter leaving a courthouse, visibly defeated. Eleanor read the article with her heart pounding. Peter had been accused of tax fraud, money laundering, and corruption. All the family businesses were being investigated. He had lost everything: the company, the fortune, the reputation. "This can't be true," Eleanor murmured, her hands trembling. "Peter would never do that." "Eleanor, honey, maybe it's best if you don't get involved." But Eleanor was already dialing the number she knew by heart. After many rings, a voice she knew well answered, but it sounded completely different, tired, defeated. "Peter." Silence on the other end of the line. "Peter, it's me. Eleanor. Eleanor." His voice broke. "My God! Eleanor, where are you?" "In Sarasota. Peter, I saw it in the paper. See what's happening." "They destroyed me, Eleanor. Completely." Peter gave a bitter laugh. "After you left, I confronted my mother about the blackmail. I said I was going to expose everything. The next day, false evidence started appearing about crimes I never committed." "That's impossible." Lorenzo Bennett has contacts in all the right places. Judges, prosecutors, detectives. They planted documents, forged contracts. Peter's voice was choked. I lost everything, Eleanor. The company, the house, even my friends turned their backs on me. Eleanor closed her eyes, feeling the guilt consume her. Peter, this is my fault. If I hadn't... No, this is my fault for being a coward for so long. Peter took a deep breath. Eleanor, where are you exactly? I need to see you. Peter, it's not safe. If they find out we're in contact, they've already destroyed me. I have nothing left to lose. Eleanor gave him her address, and Peter said he would be there on the first flight the next day. But that night, Eleanor barely slept. When Peter finally appeared at her apartment door, she barely recognized him. The powerful and elegant man she had known had been replaced by someone thinner, with deep circles under his eyes and wearing simple clothes. But when he looked at her, the same eyes full of love were there. Eleanor. He wrapped her in his arms, and they both cried, for the separation, for the pain, for the lost time. I missed you every day, she whispered against his chest. Me too. It's what kept me alive during these months of hell. They talked all night. Peter told her about how he had lost everything, how Mark had married Isabella in a quiet ceremony shortly after the scandal, how Giovanna had cut all ties with him. But there was something strange, Peter said, taking a crumpled envelope from his pocket. A week after you left, I received this. Eleanor opened the envelope. It was a copy of all the documents she had left at the Romano mansion, the blackmail photos, the recordings, the evidence of Mark's betrayal. I didn't understand at the time, Peter continued. I thought you had left it by accident. But now, Eleanor, did you leave this evidence on purpose? Eleanor confirmed with a nod. I thought you could use it against Lorenzo and your mother. But apparently it didn't work, or it worked too well. Peter stood up, starting to pace back and forth. Eleanor, what if they framed me precisely because they knew I had this evidence? What if this whole persecution was to silence me before? I could use it? Eleanor felt a spark of hope. You think? I think we have in our hands everything we need to destroy Lorenzo Bennett and expose my mother. Peter stopped in front of her. But we're going to need help. Someone who still has credibility, resources. Who? Peter smiled for the first time in months. Olivia, your ex-wife. She contacted me a few weeks ago. She said she always knew our marriage was arranged, that there was no hard feelings between us. And more importantly, Peter picked up his cell phone. Her new husband is Carlos Mendoza. Eleanor's eyes widened. Carlos Mendoza was one of the most respected investigative journalists in the country. Olivia still feels guilty for having been part of my mother's games, Peter continued. And Carlos has contacts in every judicial body. If we present the right evidence, they could reverse the charges against you. Not only that, they could expose the entire corruption network that Lorenzo set up. And my mother, she could finally pay for her years of manipulation. Eleanor stood up, a new determination shining in her eyes. Then let's do it. Eleanor, it will be dangerous. Lorenzo won't hesitate to attack us again. I don't care. Eleanor held his hands. Peter, during these 6 months I've lived like a fugitive, hiding who I am, renouncing the love of my life. I'm not running anymore. They spent the next few hours planning. Peter called Olivia, who immediately agreed to help. Carlos Mendoza also agreed to investigate, especially after seeing the evidence that Eleanor had collected. We're going to need more evidence, Carlos said during a video conference. Bank records, more recent recordings, maybe even witnesses willing to speak. I know someone, Eleanor said suddenly. Veronica Almeida. The woman Mark was cheating on you with. She contacted me a few months ago. She wanted to apologize. Said she didn't know Mark was going to get married. But more importantly, she mentioned that Lorenzo blackmailed her to continue the affair with Mark. Said he needed material against the Romano family. Peter and Carlos exchanged meaningful glances. If we get Veronica as a witness, Peter began, we'll have proof that Lorenzo orchestrated everything from the beginning, Carlos completed. Eleanor, can you contact her? I can try. 3 days later, Veronica agreed to meet them at a discreet hotel in New York City. The young woman was visibly nervous, but determined. Lorenzo threatened me, she revealed. He said that if I didn't keep Mark occupied and away from Eleanor, he would ruin my father's career in the judiciary. I was young, I was in love. I did things I regret. Do you have proof of these threats? Carlos asked. Veronica handed over a pen drive. I recorded some conversations. At the time, I was afraid. Now I want to do the right thing. While Carlos analyzed the recordings, Peter held Eleanor's hand. We're close, he whispered, very close to achieving our freedom. But neither of them knew that, on the floor above them in the same hotel, Lorenzo Bennett was watching everything through binoculars from the window of his suite. The old wolf had realized that his prey were regrouping, and he was ready for the final attack. Lorenzo picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. Giovanna? We have a problem. Your son is back, and this time he brought reinforcements. The final war was about to begin. The exposé began on a Thursday morning when Carlos Mendoza published the first report in the series, The Lords of Power. The article detailed with surgical precision the scheme of blackmail and manipulation orchestrated by Lorenzo Bennett, including the recordings of his threats to Veronica and the evidence of how he had forged the accusations against Peter. In less than 2 hours, Lorenzo's name was on every news outlet in the country. Peter and Eleanor followed everything from the safe apartment that Carlos had provided for them in New York City. With each new revelation, they felt a mixture of relief and tension. They knew that Lorenzo would not accept defeat passively, and they were right. On Friday morning, Eleanor went out to buy bread when 2 hooded men approached her in the building's parking lot. But Peter, who had insisted on following her from a distance, intervened before they could take her. Get away from her, he shouted, brandishing a baseball bat that Carlos had left in the apartment. The fight was quick but violent. One of the men pulled out a gun, but Eleanor managed to knock over a can of paint from nearby construction onto him. When the police arrived, called by neighbors, they found the 2 men trying to flee. Under questioning, they confessed to being hired by Lorenzo to intimidate the witnesses. It was the last straw. The final confrontation took place in court, in a hearing that brought together the entire New York elite. Lorenzo arrived accompanied by a team of very expensive lawyers, confident that his money and influence could still save him. Giovanna was at his side, elegant and impassive as always. Peter entered the courtroom hand in hand with Eleanor, followed by Olivia, Veronica, and Carlos. For the first time in months, Peter wore a well-tailored suit, borrowed from Carlos, and walked with the dignity of someone who had recovered his honor. The prosecutor presented a devastating case: the recordings of Lorenzo blackmailing Veronica, bank documents showing payments to false witnesses, forensic evidence proving that the contracts that incriminated Peter had been forged. But the most impactful moment came when Eleanor took the witness stand. For months I hid, she said, her clear voice echoing through the packed courtroom. I believed that I was a simple seamstress who had no right to love a powerful man. But I learned something important. True love knows no social classes, and justice shouldn't either. Eleanor looked directly at Lorenzo. This man destroyed lives for greed, separated people who loved each other, corrupted institutions. He turned Love into a weapon and family into a battlefield. When Eleanor finished, even the judge seemed moved. Giovanna was called as a witness. For the first time, the matriarch seemed fragile, aged. "Mrs. Romano," said the prosecutor, "did you know that your son Peter was innocent of the charges?" Giovanna looked at Peter, who watched her without anger, only with deep sadness. "I knew," she whispered. "And yet you allowed him to be incriminated." Long silence. Then, surprising everyone, Giovanna stood up. She began, her voice breaking. "I spent my entire life protecting this family. When my husband died, I swore I would do anything to maintain our position, our reputation. But," she looked at Peter again, "I lost my son in the process, the only one of my children who truly loved me." Tears streamed down Giovanna's face. For the first time in decades. Peter was always the best of us, honorable, loyal, capable of truly loving. She turned to Eleanor. "And you, my dear, forgive me. You weren't unsuitable. I was too blind to see that you were exactly what my son needed." Lorenzo stood up abruptly. "Giovanna, what are you doing?" "What I should have done a long time ago." Giovanna took a folder from her bag. "I'm handing over all the documents that prove our participation in his scheme. All the bank transfers, all the illegal negotiations, all the bribes." The courtroom exploded in murmurs. Lorenzo tried to leave, but was detained by the security guards. 3 months later, Lorenzo Bennett was sentenced to 15 years in prison for racketeering, active corruption, and blackmail. Giovanna received a lesser sentence in exchange for her cooperation, but lost control of the family businesses. Peter was completely acquitted and had all his assets restored, but surprised everyone by announcing that he would donate most of the fortune to charities. "Money that comes from blood doesn't bring happiness," he explained to reporters. Mark, who had discovered the whole truth about his mother and Lorenzo, issued public apologies to Peter and Eleanor. His marriage to Isabella, who had also been deceived about the whole situation, was in the process of being annulled. The wedding of Peter and Eleanor was celebrated in a small church in Little Italy, the same one where Eleanor had dreamed of marrying Mark years before. But this time, everything was different. This time, it was real. Eleanor wore a simple dress that she herself had created, and Peter was radiant to see her walk down the aisle. In the front row, Giovanna cried discreetly. There was much to be forgiven between mother and son, but they were willing to try. Olivia was there, with Carlos at her side. Veronica also attended, accompanied by a young lawyer she had met during the trial. Even some of Peter's former employees were present, happy to see the boss they respected finally find peace. "You, Peter Romano and Eleanor Farrell," said the priest, "have overcome more obstacles than most couples face in a lifetime. May this be proof that your love can overcome anything." When Peter kissed Eleanor, the church bells rang, mingling with the emotional applause of the guests. A mere year later, Peter and Eleanor opened a design and business school together in downtown New York City, aimed at low-income youth. Eleanor taught sewing and design, while Peter taught management and entrepreneurship. "You know what I love most about our story?" Eleanor said one afternoon, while they watched the students working on their projects. "What?" Peter asked, hugging her from behind. "That in the end, love didn't save us from our differences. It taught us that they never mattered from the beginning." Peter kissed the nape of her neck, breathing in the scent he had learned to associate with happiness. "I love you, Eleanor Romano. I love you too, Peter Romano. Forever." Outside, New York City continued its eternal rush. But inside, in the small oasis they had built together, Peter and Eleanor had finally found what they had always been looking for: A love that didn't need to hide, that wasn't ashamed to exist, that had transformed two lost souls into a complete family. The groom's brother had become, after all, the love of her life, and this time, nothing and no one could separate them.